When First Strike was released, the League community went wild with accusations on how this keystone would completely shake up the meta and change the game as we know it. But like many other the world is ending claims that came before it, First Strike was released to the crowd going mild and claiming that it was completely overhyped, which honestly it kind of is, at least in its current state. There are some niche users who love it like Jace, but having someone who can consistently activate it from a safe range and then have great follow-up damage within 3 seconds is pretty hard to come by. If you've seen some of my other off-meta support tutorials when I talk about each of the champion's weaknesses, you may have noticed a pattern in most of them. And it's not just off-meta supports, all supports are starved for cash. So if we can find champions that work well with First Strike, we could effectively lessen one of the big weaknesses of the role. So I went out and reviewed solo queue games around the world in Master Tier Plus to find 7 First Strike supports that are actually good, starting at number 7 being somewhat effective, all the way to number 1 being extremely effective. Zyra made an appearance in our glacial augment support video, and she's back again for First Strike. It is a viable keystone on Zyra almost solely because of the additional damage she can cause with well-placed plants within her combos. If you're able to get a full combo, including your ultimate on multiple enemies when activating First Strike, you could potentially net 100 gold plus in the mid-game. But by mid-game, you're pretty much already full build with Zyra if you have this rune or not. Full build, of course, being Liandry's. And in addition to that, just like we spoke on in the glacial augment video, Zyra support really thrives off of damage-based keystones like Comet or Electrocute. Taking First Strike means losing early lane and kill pressure in favor of a stronger mid to late game curve thanks to the increased income. So it does end up being a solid choice, but at the end of the day, that's just it. It's a choice. So if you're a Zyra main, give it a shot and see if you prefer the gold income and more snowbally feel in comparison to other keystones. The full rune page includes magical footwear, biscuit delivery, and cosmic insight with Scorch and mana flow band in the sorcery tree. For flex runes, you'll take 2 adaptive force and 1 defensive rune depending on your matchup. Items include a Spell Thief's Edge, Sork Shoes, Liandry's Anguish, Zhonya's Hourglass, a flex item depending on the enemy team, and of course control wards or wardstone if the game goes late. There's already been a few theory crafters and YouTubers out there talking about how Karthus is a potentially crazy user of First Strike, considering he has an ultimate that hits every member of the enemy team, and he can be so far away from the enemies while using it that they have no chance to stop it, which means somewhere between 70 to 300 gold every time he presses R depending on how fed he is. But can it work as support where it takes you a bit longer to get the ultimate? Absolutely. Even in the early game, if you land multiple single target Karthus Qs on enemies, you can come away with a nice little cash bonus, and once you are level 6, like the other roles, you can press R on cooldown to accrue an even more sizable chunk of change. Karthus makes his way so far down the list though because of the way you have to use the ultimate. For you to be optimally receiving gold from First Strike, you need to be using it on cooldown. However, for you to really be helping your team, you want to be using Karthus' ultimate preferably when someone's in a fight or after you die and are in the middle of the whole team. So either way, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. Using the ultimate with First Strike in either way is always a double-edged sword. In a game where you get far ahead, however, it can still work well, so just like Zyra, give it a shot to see if it fits your playstyle. The full rune page includes perfect timing, biscuit delivery, and cosmic insight with ultimate hunter and cheap shot in the domination tree. For flex runes, you'll take 1 ability haste, 1 adaptive force, and 1 defensive rune depending on your matchup. Items include a Spell Thief's Edge, Sork Shoes, Liandry's Anguish, Rabadon's Death Cap, a flex item depending on the enemy team, and of course control wards or wardstone if the game goes late. Lux in general has been on a tear recently ever since she got some massive buffs before the preseason, increasing her damage and reducing her ultimate cooldown. And since she's relatively long range, has some high combo damage, and is kinda OP at the moment, she's a clear choice for First Strike. Early game, she has some solid potential to earn cash if you're able to hit your light binding and follow up with an E and auto attacks to proc your passive. But the true money making potential occurs when she hits level 6, with your ultimate now being on a 60-second cooldown at level 1. If you're able to combo it with a Q or even hit it raw on multiple opponents, this means you'll be making it rain and hitting your 2-item power spike even faster than normal. The potential damage you could be doing with 2 items outweighs what you'll be losing in the early game damage if you were to take something like Comet or Dark Harvest. But that's assuming only if you didn't net a kill with either of those. If you already love the feel of snowballing with Dark Harvest luck support, then potentially First Strike could be a solid rune choice for you. The full rune page includes perfect timing, biscuit delivery, and cosmic insight with mana mana flow band, and absolute focus in the sorcery tree. You'll also take 2 adaptive force and 1 defensive rune depending on your matchup. Items include a Spell Thief's Edge, Boots of Lucidity, Crown of the Shattered Queen or Ludens, Shadow Flame, a flex item depending on the enemy team, and of course control wards or wardstone if the game goes late. Brand has always been one of my favorite champions, so I'm happy that he's able to finally make his way into the middle of some sort of tier list. Similar to Lux, Brand has some decent range and he makes his way higher up on the list because his early game potential of using the rune is substantially higher than hers. Brand's passive, Blaze, is what really contributes to this, as the constant burn damage you do will benefit from the 10% damage increase after hitting an ability and help to earn more cash as well. The potential goes up even higher if you're able to quickly land 3 abilities on an opponent and trigger the delayed explosion from Blaze, because the detonation time is just 2 seconds. So if you're able to quickly land 3 abilities with first strike within 1 second of one another, that means you'll be drowning in even more cash. The reason it's not the best choice on Brand is because he loves Dark Harvest and the domination tree, and the main benefit of first strike, the gold generation, doesn't mean as much on him because his base damage is so high. It's similar to Zyra, where after you have Liandry's, you can pretty much take on the world if you land your abilities, or even sometimes if you only land a few of those abilities. So while he can use it consistently, you may be better suited with other runes. The full rune page includes Perfect Timing, Biscuit Delivery, and Time Warp Tonic with Presence of Mind and Cut Down in the Precision tree. You'll also take 1 ability haste, 1 adaptive force, and 1 defensive rune depending on your matchup. Items include Spell Thief's Edge, Sork Shoes, Liandry's, Zonia's, a flex item depending on the enemy team, and of course control wards or wardstone if the game goes late. Vel'Koz feels like the long-lost damage-dealing support that people have stopped playing. He's very similar to Brand with his low mobility, heavy damage, and ability to make ADCs rage. But he differs a bit in his long range and thirst for items to heavily increase his damage output. And that is why Vel'Koz makes it higher up the list than Brand. Your ability to make lots of money early game is going to revolve around if you can hit Vel'Koz's knockup or E consistently so you can proc the additional damage from your passive. While you could just simply hit your E and follow up with the rest of your abilities, to make it easier on yourself, I would suggest first landing a Q from range to safely proc first strike and slow the opponent, and then follow up with E for an easier time landing it. Beyond just the massive damage you can do with the passive though, activating it on an opponent and then following it up with Vel'Koz's ultimate to do true damage heavily increases the total gold you'll be making. If you're able to safely master all of this, you can find yourself becoming the team's AP carry faster than a Vel'Koz support with Comet would. The full rune page includes Magical Footwear, Futures Market, and Cosmic Insight with Cheap Shot and Relentless Hunter in the domination tree. You'll also take 2 adaptive force and 1 defensive rune depending on your matchup. Items include Spell Thief's Edge, Boots of Lucidity, Ludens against squishy teams or Liandry's against tankier teams, either as Zonia's or Banshees depending on the enemy team, a flex item depending on the enemy team, and of course control wards or wardstone if the game goes late. On top of the list of long-range damage dealers lies Xerath, and that's why he makes his way up to number 2 on our list today. Xerath is by and large the most annoying long-range poke support, and beyond that, none of his damage is gated behind his passive. Where champions lower on the list have skill shots that are a bit harder to hit, like Vel'Koz's E or Brand's Q or Lux's Q, Xerath's W and Q, which he maxes first, are hard to avoid and combo well with one another from a safe range that doesn't require him to put himself at risk. His overall consistency is what makes him reach almost the tippy top of the list, and his item dependency also makes him a more optimal user than some of the aforementioned supports who are lower ranked. Having played a lot of Xerath support myself, I will say that you'll probably miss Comet, but if you're accurate enough with the rest of his skill shots, you'll be heavily rewarded. The full rune page includes Magical Footwear, Biscuit Delivery, and Time Warp Tonic with Scorch and Mana Flow Band in the sorcery tree. You'll also take 2 adaptive force and 1 defensive rune depending on your matchup. Items include a Spell Thief's Edge, Sork Shoes, a Crown or Ludens, Horizon Focus, a flex item depending on the enemy team, and of course control wards or wardstone if the game goes late. Finally, as the list ends, we land on someone who is not a mage support. Senna. I can already feel some controversy as many summoners are bringing Fleet of Footwork for Senna's Keystone now, but I'm here to tell you that it's actually split pretty evenly down the middle between people choosing Fleet of Footwork or First Strike. With First Strike, Senna is a money-making machine, getting cash for her support item, collecting souls, which have an increased drop rate for fasting Senna for some time now, and First Strike. And that's good because many of Senna's builds are costly, and adding in more gold generation allows her to get to her preferred state, having at least 2 items even faster. Early game, Senna can easily activate First Strike by using her Q through minions, or gain even more benefit and income by first landing her W to root the enemy in place and landing a bunch of follow-up damage. Mid to late game, as you collect souls and naturally begin to outrange everyone in the game with your auto attacks, you will basically be proccing First Strike every time it's up as long as you have good positioning. Again, while Fleet of Footwork is solid on Senna, out of all the other champions we covered, First Strike really has the capability of becoming her new go-to rune, and it's because of that Senna makes her way up at the top of the list. The full rune page includes magical footwear, biscuit delivery, and approach velocity, with presence of mind and cut down in the precision tree. You'll also take attack speed, 1 adaptive force, and 1 defensive rune depending on your matchup. Items include a spectral sickle, boots of swiftness, divine sunderer or kraken slayer, rapid fire cannon, a flex item depending on the enemy team, and of course control wards or wardstone if the game goes late. Thanks guys for checking out this video. If you enjoy this content, I heavily suggest you go check out last week's video when I covered the best supports who use glacial augment. See you guys next time. Peace.